welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Anshula and it's been a while since we've sat down and just chatted about books, so grab a little drink and let's talk spring reads. I'm a seasonal mood reader and spring is one of my favorite seasons to escape into a story that feels like a cottagecore Pinterest mood board, full of blooming flowers and lush gardens and wide open landscapes along the countryside. Spring is a time of metamorphosis and renewal, and so many of my favorite spring books carry the optimism of fresh starts. A quote that to me perfectly encapsulates the season and directs the kind of books I want to pick up in April and May is, "Everything is made new in the spring. Springs themselves are always so new too. No spring is ever just like any other spring. It always has something of its own to be its peculiar sweetness." And that quote is from Anne of the Island by Ellen Montgomery, who also wrote one of the most cottagecore books I want to share with you. Anne of Green Gables. This book is the definition of cottagecore, a warm, feel-good story set in Avonlea, a fictional town with snug farmsteads, sweet air, and sloping meadows. The backdrop is delightful. Ellen Montgomery's descriptions of Prince Edward Island are radiant, or as Anne would say, radiantly lovely. Anne is the talkative, adjective-loving protagonist of Anne of Green Gables. She's just 11 years old when she arrives on Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert's farm. The Cuthberts were expecting a young boy from an orphanage to work as a farmhand at Green Gables, but instead they get Anne, scrawny, outspoken Anne, who wants to live life to its dramatic fullest. Her ability to romanticize gentle, everyday moments while still being headstrong and determined is what makes this book so charming, and it's the reason why Anne of Green Gables is one of my favorite books of all time. The next book I want to mention isn't often talked about on BookTube, but it has been rapidly gaining popularity ever since it was selected for Reese Witherspoon's book club. I'm so happy The Comfort of Crows is getting more recognition. This is a collection of personal essays by Margaret Renkl, framed through an entire year in her Nashville backyard. Margaret Renkl is a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. In her New York Times article, she describes nature with passion and actively speaks up about climate change. This particular essay collection is more of an ode to the joy of backyard spaces, their wildness, their unruliness, and their ability to be a natural refuge. The Comfort of Crows is full of memories and meanderings and a head rush of thoughts, but it is also an ask. This book prompted me to watch, observe, praise, and pay a little more attention to nature, its whims and wonders, its brutality and callousness, its beauty and bounty, and its changing patterns. I binged these essays last spring. Each one is 2-ish pages and paired with a lovely collage by Margaret's brother, Billy. When I mentioned The Comfort of Crows on my weblog last year, I got so many messages saying I need to read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer as soon as possible, and I finally finished Braiding Sweetgrass. It took a while, 3-ish months. I flitted back and forth between reading the physical book and listening to the audiobook. Robin Wall Kimmerer narrates the audiobook herself, and she has such a calming, gentle voice and this grandmotherly, age-ripened way of sharing stories. And Braiding Sweetgrass is full of stories. Robin Wall Kimmerer challenges the streamlined, factual ways science is often imparted through non-linear personal storytelling. So much of this book is lessons she learned at the intersections of all of her identities as a scientist, a botanist, a professor, a mother, a daughter, an indigenous woman, and a citizen of Potawatomi Nation. Her deep love of the natural world is so clear in her writing, so if you're interested in understanding how plants care for us and the ways we can begin to readjust a one-directional relationship with land to one that is more reciprocal and wholesome and giving, Braiding Sweetgrass is the book I want to pass along this spring as a recommendation. Another recent read, well, this was a reread, that I want to share is Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore. Picture the most beautiful botanical garden you can imagine. Double the height and intensify the color of every flower you see. Reading Wild Beauty feels like a daisy, daydreamy walk through that garden. This story orbits around Estrella Nomiovides, one of 5 cousins who can coax plants from the earth. All the Nomi women have this magic. It's been passed down from generation to generation. But the women also bear the burden of a curse. When they fall madly in love, their lover vanishes. So when all 5 cousins fall for the same woman, they become afraid and cast offerings into the grounds of La Pradera. La Pradera provides a boy in return, a boy who seems mismatched from time. Surrounding this boy is the suspense of who he is, what he might represent, and why La Pradera chose to dredge him up. I love how lush Anna Marie McLemore's prose is. Every line is enchanting and lyrical and flower-filled. This book is peak springtime. There are some parts of the plot that don't add up, but I adore the atmosphere and the ending reveal. Next is the Tea Dragon Society. The first chapter of the Tea Dragon Society is titled Spring. There's one chapter dedicated to each season, but Kay O'Neill's imaginative Studio Ghibli-esque world is introduced to pops, then shades, then full panels of green. There are 3 graphic novels in the series, and to me, each one is a mini serotonin boost. The Tea Dragon Society stories are the kind you can't help but smile at, like Winnie the Pooh. Greta, a young blacksmith apprentice, stumbles upon a puppy-sized dragon lost and cornered in an alley. She returns this little dragon to a local tea shop where the co-owner invites her to learn about tea dragons and their lore, their characteristics. This book is just cozy fantasy world building and cute cottagecore art. That's it. That's the vibe. If you're looking for a wholesome book that you can read in a single spring afternoon alongside a freshly brewed cup of jasmine or chamomile tea, this is the book I would recommend. Speaking of tea, A Psalm for the Well-Built and A Prayer for the Crown-Shy is a soothing sci-fi duology that starts with an urban garden monk, sibling Dex, deciding to leave the city, switch their job, and become a tea monk. Someone who travels from village to village on an ox-bike wagon and sets up a folding table and lays out tins of tea and creates this little pocket of space where people can come by, offload their worries, and sip hot drinks. The first book feels like a cottagecore response to a quarter-life crisis, because even though Dex lives in a post-capitalistic society, they want more. They want to hear the sound of cloud crickets and wander on relic roads, and as they try to do so, they encounter a wild-built robot Mosscap in the lush forests of the moon planet they call home. As Mosscap and Dex talk, Dex begins to externalize their internalized discomforts. So these novellas aren't by any means plot-driven, but they are driven by a question. In a world where people have what they want, does having more matter? And I love how Becky Chambers approached that big question through a gentle, little, comforting story set in a hope punk world. The reluctant hero of this next rec is Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit. Hobbits are little people who dress in bright greens and yellows and have leathery soles for feet. They have good-natured faces and deep, fruity laughs, and Bilbo's usual day involves cottagecore activities like drinking tea and baking seed cakes, but then he is drawn into a big adventure by the great wizard Gandalf. This middle grade is full of laughter and singing and cheerfulness. So if you like the cozy fantasy subgenre, The Hobbit is another book I will happily recommend over and over and over again. I also want to chat about The Rural Diaries. The Rural Diaries chronicles Hilary Burden Morgan's move to and time in Mischief Farm. Morgan was a Hollywood actress. She had no prior farming experience, but she quit acting and moved to a big farm in a little town where she ended up boarding alpacas and getting Highland cows from a Craigslist listing and raising a baby duckling. Hilary Burden Morgan shares little snippets of farm life in The Rural Diaries, and she shares it in a way that feels like a love letter to Rhinebeck, New York, the town that became her home and safe space and community. If you like celebrity memoirs, this is one of my personal favorites. Please check the content warnings. Hilary Burden Morgan does express the engulfing impacts of loss and grief in The Rural Diaries. Her ability to openly share her feelings is such a strength, and her tone is refreshingly direct. But it is also the reason why I would encourage you to check content warnings before sliding this book onto a spring TBR. The next book is one I loved as a kid, and I reread this little novella last year before visiting the Botanical Garden in Atlanta, Georgia. The Atlanta Botanical Garden garden at the time had a seasonal installation called Alice's Wonderland, and I wanted to incorporate some Alice's Adventures in Wonderland references into the travel guide I was working on. I loved creating that guide, and I'm so happy y'all loved it too. If I have any behind the scenes footage, I'll share it here. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll is one of my favorite children's classics. It's a tale that doesn't take itself too seriously. The story starts with Alice sitting on a bank near her older sister. Her sister is reading a book that to Alice seems quite boring because it doesn't have pictures or dialogue in it. Suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes runs past her, murmuring to itself, oh dear, and Alice follows this white rabbit and tumbles down a rabbit hole. She finds a tiny golden key and it opens the door to the loveliest garden she ever did see, and she wants to get into that garden full of beds of bright flowers and cool fountains. So she tries to, and along the way she encounters a lot of nonsensical situations involving magical bottles, a grinning cat, a riddling hatter. If you like Logic Despicable, Where Are You Down, friend, I would not recommend picking this up unless you can stomach a hearty portion of disbelief. Lewis Carroll parodies the rigidity of Victorian society in such silly, goofy ways. Context: this book was published in the 1860s. I personally love how playful the language is and how dreamlike Alice's Adventures in Wonderland are. So if you're game for a weird, wacky time, I think you'll really enjoy this, and the elements of a tea party and rose tree gardens make this an easy springtime rec. Finally, we have The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. The Enchanted April starts with an Englishwoman, Mrs. Lottie Wilkins, seeing an advertisement in the Times that reads, "To those who appreciate wisteria and sunshine, small medieval Italian castle on the shores of the Mediterranean." Lottie then starts daydreaming about April in Italy and can't stop. Italy is stuck in her mind and she sees herself there. So she flees London's wet, rainy days with 3 other women and journeys to the Italian Riviera on a dream cottagecore holiday meant to be free of men. The first 3/4 of The Enchanted April is delightfully transportive, and so many scenes felt as comical and witty as any of those crafted by Jane Austen. San Salvatore, the castle the ladies vacation in, is also a springtime dreamscape. Picture golden light cast on lilies and leaves, curtains of wisteria, and Daphne shrubs in bloom. I love The Enchanted April so much, but I wish the arrival of certain characters in the end was blotted out. Those characters swooping into the last 1/4 was probably meant to be sweet and romantic, but to me, it distorted and eclipsed one of my favorite aspects of this classic: the way the main quartet of holidaying women learn to love, grow fond of, and cherish one another in a single spring. The dynamics between Lottie and Rose and Lottie and Lady Caroline was so fun to read about. The Enchanted April is our monthly book club pick, so if you want to learn more about Eden Travel Book Club or grab a free printable discussion guide, I'll leave a link in the description box below. And I believe those are all the spring books that I wanted to share today. Let me know if you've read any of these books, your opinions on them, or what books are on your spring TBR, because I'm still building my TBR for spring this year, and I love adding your recs into my TBR list. I love hearing from y'all and chatting with y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, friends!